Hello, 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 and welcome to our final night of the Fall Wheel with Me Foundation Empowerments. My name is Jessie Strawham, the founder of Wheel with Me Foundation, and tonight I am so excited to be joined by Colleen Cosplay, who is a cosplayer and YouTuber from the Pacific Northwest. Through her YouTube channel, she shares tutorials on how to make your own costumes, including how to sew it, do foam work, prop building, wig styling, and makeup. So if you want to learn how to be a disabled performer and how to share your experience as a disabled cosplayer, cover the unique intersections between disability, cosplay, and covering topics like accessibility in the spaces, adaptive costume design, which we all need, right? And mobility aid decorations, and how to make cosplay more inclusive for disabled cosplayers. So tonight, Colleen, thank you for your time. We are so glad to have you, so glad to learn, because this is something that just won't only apply to cosplayers, but like parents with kids that are disabled, right? How to make costumes accessible. And so thank you for your time. I'm going to pin you and let you take over, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Okay. So thank you for that lovely introduction. My name is Colleen. I'm a cosplayer. We're going to be talking about adaptive costume design. But before we jump into that, I really want to let you know about my story and my disability. I am going to go over some industry examples that are going to apply to a much wider range of disabilities. But when it comes down to DIY and making my own cosplay, a lot of that's going to be very specific to me because I'm making it for me. And we're going to go over some ideas and brainstorming. So cosplayer for 10 plus years, YouTuber, that was all kind of covered in my bio. There's a picture of me not in costume. It's like the only one you'll see in this video. Okay. My disability journey, I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user, so I'm not a full-time wheelchair user. I've gone through the knee brace, I've gone through the crutches, using the wheelchair. I have a degenerative cartilage disorder, so cartilage protects your joints. So when you're running or jumping, it absorbs that shock. And my cartilage is deteriorating and detaching from the bone. So it is not protecting that shock. It's not really helping with that weight bearing. So over the years, I've used a lot of different mobility aids, and I'm going to be talking a bit about all those different mobility aids and how I've adapted to them and my journey. So starting out, I was in high school when I first had symptoms. And like a lot of us, dealing with a disability, it's scary. It's really scary. And I feel like the first reaction is to hide it. And that's not something I'm proud of, but it's something I did. And I think a lot of people could relate to being like, what's happening to my body? I don't want people to know something's wrong. So that's where I started out, just, um, these are my first few cosplays. You can see that I kind of did some sitting stuff. I had a knee brace, which you don't see a lot. And I just didn't like the knee brace didn't fit my costumes. I wasn't comfortable with it. And that's the problem, right? When you're not comfortable using the mobility aids you need, and on top of, dealing with a disability, you're also dealing with, okay, how are people perceiving me and my disability? So then I ended up using crutches, which are a lot harder to hide than the knee brace. And I had two choices. I could either quit cosplaying and continue to hide this, and or I could embrace it and I could just say I'm a disabled cosplayer and this is me. Okay, I'm going to create around my mobility aids with my mobility aids instead of trying to hide them. And this is where you see adaptive design come into play here. You can see I'm gaining more confidence. I'm designing, I have pictures with my mobility aids, not trying to hide them. And then finally finding that confidence, started using the wheelchair later, and I really got comfortable making decorations for the wheelchair. I did like the Captain America shields. And I also started sharing my story with finding that confidence and how to do cosplay as a disabled person, and how you can be comfortable doing cosplay with a disability, even a visible disability, instead of having to feel like you need to hide it, because that's no fun for anyone. So that is me. That's the background we're going with. Now, what is adaptive fashion design? We're just going to start from the ground and build up. So I really like this definition. Adaptive fashion is clothing designed to make it accessible for disabled people and aging populations to dress themselves independently, wear their clothes comfortably, and work with any medical equipment they need, all while still being fashionable. So it's not just the confidence, though that is a big part. It's also being able to independently dress yourself, right? So I want costumes that I can get in and out of by myself. I have made costumes that I could not get in and out of by myself. And there was a time I was stuck in a ball gown until my husband could come home and like release me from it, right? You don't want that. And adaptive fashion design can also be very custom to your specific disabilities and can be really, really helpful. Overall, it's what got me from that shy, I want to hide my disability, I'm not confident, to where I am now, where I am like fully incorporating my mobility aids into my cosplays. I'm showing it off. I'm doing what I need to cosplay comfortably. So let's talk about some industry examples of adaptive fashion design, because there's a lot that you can just go out and buy. Yes, I do a lot of DIY. I make stuff, but if you are not a crafty person or cannot physically do a lot of that crafting, then you can just buy this stuff too. You can just buy stuff that works. There's been a huge movement in the fashion industry for this. In the last few years, there's been a lot of really big name companies making adaptive fashion. So Victoria's Secret, I want to say in the last month or two, just revealed their adaptive fashion line. So that's like underwear with closures on the sides or the front that you can do if you have limited mobility in your hands. I really like these shoes with the zippers. If you have trouble getting your feet into shoes, you can just zip them up, pull the top off, put your feet in. Tommy Hilfiger has a whole adaptive line. So it's not only these like Velcro side pants, which are easier to get into, it's also things like magnet closures on shirts and stuff like that. Overall, just making it easier to get into these clothes. And I think they look pretty nice too. Here's some more examples. So we have Open Style Lab, which is a nonprofit, and they have so many resources on adaptive fashion design. They definitely do a lot more on the teaching and educating side of things. So if you are wanting to learn more, they do that. We have JCPenney's and Kohl's. Those are both really big brand stores. Sure you've heard of them. They have adaptive fashion lines. So this isn't some really niche thing that no one's heard of anymore. It's made a huge resurgence in industry, and now you can find this all the big places that you shop. Look online, you can find adaptive wear that fits your needs. So we're here to talk about cosplay, though. I'm a cosplayer. I love talking about costuming. So I also want to talk about some industry examples for costumes, which is much more niche than just general wear. So Disney released a huge line of adaptive costumes for children. They have like matching wheel covers. You can be a princess. They have the easy closures. So if you're looking for Halloween costumes for kids with disabilities, this is it. Disney has them. And then I also want to talk about another nonprofit called Magic Wheelchair, and they create huge wheelchair costumes for kids, and then they reveal them at conventions and events. So that's something where you can just apply, and you got a chance to have these huge costumes. They're really, really impressive. As a one person making costumes who is disabled, I can't pull off anything that big, but it's a great option. So the thing is, though, you'll notice both of those things are for kids. So as a disabled adult who had started this cosplay YouTube channel before my disability was so serious and was just like, how am I gonna keep this running? I was looking around like, has anyone done this before? There just aren't any big industry like mass manufactured adult adaptive costumes, not that I know of. So I felt like I was a lot on my own here. So let's talk about some of the things that I did to adapt my costumes. And this video doesn't have sound. I'm just going to talk around it to show off a few examples of what I do with my costumes that I make myself so that they are adapted to me. This is more DIY stuff that you can do yourself. So for cosplay, zippers are a big thing for me. Buttons are also really hard. So it's doing things like having bigger zippers or having bigger buttons, doing things that I can get dressed in on my own or while sitting down. and attaching props to the back of the wheelchair, doing the wheelchair decorations. And then we're also, later on, I'm going to talk more in depth about things like capes and princess skirts and really big costumes that just don't really fit in a wheelchair and how I get around those. Okay, so first thing I talked about, mobility friendly closures and fasteners. So I want stuff that works with my adaptive tool if I can't make it work with my hands. There are plenty of adaptive tools out there. I have one that hooks on a zipper and I have one that hooks on buttons. So for making my costumes, I want a zipper that's big enough to hook onto. And that's also something that you could like replace a zipper on an existing costume. A lot of mass manufactured costumes will have those tiny little invisible zippers. They don't have anything to hook onto. They're just this tiny little piece of plastic, and I have such a hard time grabbing those. Also, like irregularly shaped buttons can be a problem. Just stuff like that. I want to be able to get in and out of this costume, and having those invisible zippers or buttons that I have trouble grasping is like that makes it so I need to have someone else to get into my costume. And then how am I supposed to go to the bathroom at an event? Like these are the real questions, right? How am I supposed to get out of this costume and do stuff independently? So make sure you can get in and out of your closures, and make sure you can put it on with your range of motion, take it off, that sort of stuff. So let's talk more about the costuming side of things that you would not wear in your everyday, most likely. Long hair, specifically wigs, hems, and then superhero capes. So a few things to keep in mind. Like if you are trying to do a specific character, this is something that's pretty popular in the cosplay side of things, and even kind of going sometimes into the Halloween sector, is you want to look like the character. There's kind of this striving to look like the character you're trying to portray. That's fine, but do not sacrifice your ability to use your mobility aid for that. So here's examples of times that I had issues, times it did not work out. This is very much a trial and error sort of thing. And sometimes you try and it doesn't work out. So here's what a big skirt looks like, and it gets stuck under my wheelchair. This is annoying and not very practical. So if you are cosplaying a big princess dress or something, you might want to slim it down. Another option that I want to talk about is capes, which is the same thing but more dangerous. At least with my skirt, it's annoying. With the cape, you can actually get hurt if you're wheeling backwards. You wheel over this thing, it pulls at your neck, right? So with capes, shortening them, making them more fitted, and I also like for all my capes to have a pop-off option. So if it gets caught in something, I can just pop it off and I do not get strangled to death. So safety first, and make sure you're trying everything on before your big day event, whether that is trick-or-treating on Halloween or going to an anime con like I do. Make sure you try it with your wheelchair first, because the last thing you want is you show up to this event and your wheelchair eats your dress is ruined, and you know your safety is also at risk because of it. So keeping everything really short, really fitted, and testing it out. So here's a few examples. We have the first one that was a failure, and then two examples of more fitted dresses that I've worn that are not in the way of the wheels. And then with capes, again, the first picture is the one that did not work. One of them, that's a huge cape, right? So instead, I brought it in, I shortened it up, and the picture on the right is the harness it snaps onto. So that's held on with little snaps. And if that cape should catch on something, if for some reason I should roll backwards and it gets caught in the wheels, I could just pop it off instead of potentially getting hurt. You know, what Edna Mode from The Incredibles, no capes. That's exactly the situation here. You want to make sure you can lose the cape very quickly if it catches. Long hair can also get caught in the wheels, actually. I didn't realize it until recently when I finally was like, I want to have a long wig for once. And it was getting caught in the wheels and also between my hands and the wheels. So as I was pushing, it was like, oh, like taking my head with it. So here's an example of a character that I did a costume of, and her hair is all the way to the floor, like not reasonable. Even if you weren't dealing with a wheelchair, you'd probably shorten it anyways, so you could at least walk. But here you can see I shortened it all the way to like kind of shoulder length, just to help with that safety. I can imagine few worse things than getting your wig stuck in your wheelchair. Let's talk about some other things about adapting for wheelchair use, mostly into the fit of the costume and getting dressed. Kind of those things we were talking about with more of the industry standards, making pants that fit differently, because turns out pants, they can fit different if you're planning on standing or sitting. If you are sitting in jeans, I've noticed for a long time, sometimes it like pushes on the hips and the fabric bunches up. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, like the fabric bunches up in the front and it gets really uncomfortable after a while. So when I make pants, skirts, I use really soft, stretchy fabric, and I use a lot of elastic. And I also like to put a little bit of extra space in there so that I'm not getting that kind of like restriction and the pulling on the hips. This is another thing you can also just buy. You can look up wheelchair pants, and they make pants like that with those specifications that have a little bit more space, and they're more designed to a sitting form than a standing form. One thing with making my own costumes is I like to fit everything sitting. Yes, I can stand for a handful of minutes as an ambulatory wheelchair user, but I'm taking the wheelchair to the event. I'm gonna need my wheelchair for 5 hours getting around a convention. So whatever mobility aid you are planning to use for this outfit, or mobility aid you will use the most, I would design to that, and I would just do all the fitting, do all the patterning on a sitting form instead of a standing form if you have to. Also with skirts, you'll want to make them a little bit longer. A lot of mini skirts are just not super flattering on a wheelchair user. There's something with mini skirts, you kind of taught like cross your legs, right? When you're wearing them, that's not super comfortable while pushing a wheelchair. So I just make all my skirts a little bit longer. And I also like to make them a bit longer in the back than the front, so that the skirt is nicely tucked under my legs. It's not flaring out into the wheels, stuff like that. So this is a costume that I did. Again, this doesn't have sound. This is a costume I did for a fashion show, actually. I was part of the Her Universe fashion show in San Diego. And this is like my achievement of the big fashion couture look that works with a wheelchair. So I wanted specifically to design something that would look really impressive, would be couture, would be that fashion runway, but I could get dressed by myself and I could do runway. So you see kind of the fitted legs, like I talked about before. I do a lot of big designing on the shoulders if possible, or around the neck, or maybe like a symbol on the bust. Lots more imagery kind of like up here instead of in the legs. I've noticed things like shorts and big belts get lost in the wheelchair. And I also wanted to make it so I could get in and out even while sitting if I had to. So those are the big things design-wise if you're looking to make a really outstanding, like revolutionary look, but make it wheelchair accessible. Okay, this part is really fun. Mobility aid decorations. I've put this as kind of a separate section because the mobility aid decorations don't help me get dressed into a costume. They do not follow that part of the definition. If anything, they make it harder to get into the costume because not only am I dressing myself, I'm also dressing my mobility aids. And by now, my wheelchair has like a few dozen different outfits, right? So I have to keep switching them out, you know? So while this does not help me get dressed, it goes back more to confidence, feeling comfortable in your cosplay. Because as someone who, like I said, I did not have much confidence when I was starting. So as that person, when people stared in public, that bothered me so much. That really hurt my confidence when people would be like, "What's wrong with you?" Or like, just staring, right? Because I'm so young to be using mobility aids. But I noticed once I started decorating my mobility aids, instead of saying, "Oh, wow, what's wrong?" people said, "Oh my gosh, that looks awesome." And I was getting all these compliments. So I've kind of taken the philosophy that many wheelchair users have, that if people are going to stare, might as well give them something to look at, right? So I decided I would just start going all out, decorating my mobility aids, making them match the outfit. And then when people were staring, I'm like, they're probably just looking at my cool wheel covers. They're looking at, how I've decorated my mobility aid. And that really gave me the confidence, right? Because then it's like, they're not staring because of any of these bad things. They're staring because I look great. That is the mindset to have. So here's some examples in industry. This is another thing that if you aren't very crafty, you can absolutely go out and buy mobility aid decorations or decorated mobility aids. I imagine any mobility aid that exists, someone has decorated. If not an industry thing that you can buy, someone has put rhinestones on it before, because this community is just so creative. So industry examples, there's Izzy wheels. So that's the kind of flower wheels I have on that picture. So these are wheels that attach with Velcro. They work for basically any wheelchair that has spokes that you can wrap Velcro around. They have a few different sizes. Izzy Wheels has also collaborated with Disney and Marvel. If you want Disney characters on your wheels or Marvel characters, they have a wide selection. And that's an option if you are not a crafty person and don't want to make them yourself. You just buy some. Next up, we have cool crutches. So those are the pink crutches that I'm using in the picture on the right. So they make custom crutches, whatever color you want. They got glitter, they got patterns, or you can send them a picture of anything and they will put it on your crutches or walking sticks. So send them a picture of your dog and they will print your dog on your walking sticks. So that's another option for crutch decorations. There's also Neo walk sticks, pretty similar to cool crutches. They'll make custom walking sticks. And then I also wanted to put that Aerie, that's a pretty big company. They also have ostomy bag covers on their website, which I think is a pretty cool thing to see entering kind of the larger fashion industry, is that we're seeing these things, which previously it was very a DIY thing, like mobility aid users had to decorate stuff themselves, but we're really seeing it start to come into industry and having a lot of those bigger players like Disney come in and make, these collaborate on these wheelchair covers and stuff. So it's a few places you can buy these if you're not very crafty, or just don't want to bother crafting, that's fine. Now we're going to get into the DIY stuff. I love making mobility aid decorations. And something that comes with having an online presence and making these costumes, people go crazy for them, okay? So many people have loved seeing the matching outfits on the wheelchair that match what I'm wearing. But something that's come with them is a lot of recommendations and requests, and why don't you try, all good things. People are just getting super excited, and I've had a lot of people suggest things that just wouldn't work for me, and that's what we're going to be talking about here is my guidelines. So you must be able to safely use the mobility aid. If there is anything that makes it so I cannot push my wheels, it is of no use to me. So anything that would hinder the ability to move my arms, stuff like that. Another thing to consider is I will also have someone push the wheelchair for me if I get really tired. So I also wouldn't want to make a decoration that would make it impossible for anyone to assist me. If I did have fatigue or high pain, I would just be stranded for the sake of a pretty decoration. So totally do not want that either. Also, where are you taking this thing? What are you doing with it? So a lot of the reason my mobility aid decorations are really slim as compared to what you saw from like Magic Wheelchair before is because I do adaptive dance, which looks something like this. So I dance in full costumes in my wheelchair. And as you can imagine, you need a lot of range of movement to do this sort of thing. I'm reaching over the side of my wheelchair. I'm leaning backwards. I'm leaning forwards. I'm doing wheelies. I'm moving my arms, right? So something like building a Mario go-kart in cardboard around my entire chair, you can just see how there's no way I could dance in that, right? So all my decorations I keep very fitted to the chair. You also have to think about, um, again, where you are taking this. Is the venue going to be really crowded? If there's going to be a lot of people there, you don't want to have this huge thing that you're carrying around with you. Are you going to be able to get through doors or be in elevators? Because imagine making this huge decoration and you can no longer fit into an elevator, right? Or get through doors or really interact with the environment. And another thing to consider is if you, as the disabled person, can put on the decoration and take it off. Because just like the independently being able to dress, you want to be able to independently dress your mobility aid too. You don't want to have to rely on someone else to put this costume on for you. So all my wheel covers attach with snaps. They wrap around the connection between the wheel and the push rim. So that is something that I can just snap it on myself. It's pretty easy, snap it off. And my wheel covers are fabric as opposed to like the Izzy wheel plastic ones. Those I can also get on and off by myself. It just takes a little bit longer. So I could put those on myself. A lot of elastic stuff to attach. I would not recommend using stuff like duct tape or sticky stuff that leaves residue. That's just harder to take off and it could leave sticky stuff on your chair. So I always use like snap connections, elastic connections, something that just kind of wraps around and you can pull off. Okay, so crutch covers, same sort of thing. The way they attach is it's just fabric that wraps around the outside. And you can kind of see it in this picture on the right, but they have little corset back lace ups. So I just have little buttonholes in the back and I just lace up a little corset for each crutch. And then when I want to switch the cover, undo the lacing, pull the little sock sleeve off and switch it out. So again, do not recommend duct tape. The very first time I did a crutch decoration, I used like rhinestone stickers, like just blocks of rhinestone that you stick on. Super cute. There's still gunk on the cup of my crutch to this day. So that's something you also want to be considering is how permanent is your decoration going to be? How long do you want to have it on? Okay, here's more examples of my wheel covers. And for both the wheel covers and crutch covers, I do have specific tutorials on my YouTube channel that goes step by step, patterning, sewing, cutting. Pretty easy for like a beginning sewist to follow if you want like a step by step. You actually want to create this. Okay, this is fun. Let's talk about accessories again. Diving back into costuming, some weird stuff that you would not normally have. Things like wings, fairy wings, angel wings, that sort of stuff. So when I started using the wheelchair, I kind of swore off wings entirely. I had a costume where I had angel wings back when I used crutches, and when I used the wheelchair, I was just so heartbroken selling this costume. Like, I'll never wear wings again because it just doesn't work with the wheelchair, especially with dance and being needing the full range of motion of my back, right? Then I fell in love with this fairy show. I love the little fairies, and I decided I'd give it another go, and I attached my wings to the back of my wheelchair. Same with a lot of my other props. So it's just a elastic harness that wraps around the chair. Here it is. So just elastic strap, just put it over the back of the chair, and then you can slide the wings in, pin the wings on, use snaps, just attach the wings to that. So I've done a few different pairs of fairy wings, and it took a while to perfect it because you need to have full range of your elbows. Someone else has to be able to push you. You need to be able to fit through doors, all those things we talked about, but it's absolutely possible. Same with props. I realized that if I had a prop that I would hold in my hands, like these are prop side weapons for a character, that like what was I supposed to do with these when I'm trying to push around, right? Like what am I supposed to do with these side? So I made a holster that goes on the back. Same process, it's just elastic straps. put the weapons into, and I can roll around hands-free and then grab them later. So that's just a few ways that I have made costuming work with the wheelchair, and I've found a whole lot of confidence in doing it. Okay, so are there any questions? That's what I have for you guys.
I do want to say that was so interesting. I didn't know that Disney made costumes for wheelchair
Yeah,
users. And I also, the way you do those wheel covers is super cool, the way they clip on that.
thank
Yeah,
you, thank you.
I was gonna say I don't have questions, but it's all super cool. Like,
Thank you.
yeah, very, very cool. And I'm like, like the DIY, or you can buy it. And I'm like, in my head, I'm super crafty and can do all the things. And then reality comes and it's just not the same. So
I mean, yeah, I
it
also buy
was
these
awesome.
things because sometimes I don't have time, and it's just I get these comments that are like, "Oh, this looks so cool, but I'll never be able to do that because I can't, maybe you physically cannot do all this crafting stuff." It's like, "No, no, no, don't say that." Like there's so many ways you can make this happen.
It's all very, very cool.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I agree. That was really and the presentation was very well done. So thank you. Thank you so much, Colleen, for just spending your time doing this. I'll send you the YouTube link as well so that you have that, and like we're gonna distribute this to everyone that signed up
Okay,
and get it out so people know how to make their own costumes. I'm just thinking
thank
about
you.
Halloween next year. I'm like, oh my gosh, me and Brie could do something cute.
Yeah, yeah.
I need wheel covers. That's what I kept thinking. I was like, ooh, wheel covers. I could do that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're so much fun.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for your time, Tanya. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Thank
Uh,
you.
this has been another awesome Wheel with Me empowerment week, and I am just so grateful to have the opportunity to share these resources and amazing individuals like Colleen that are in our community out here making amazing things, doing amazing things. So I appreciate that. And if you guys gain value from today's show and you want to share it with somebody and let them know, hey, we can all create adaptive clothing, and I think that's really freaking cool. So thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Tanya. And until next time, y'all have a good night.